Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Energy Realities podcast. We are here today on Monday, July 13th, 2026. We're all back from holiday except for Irina Slav, who is taking the month of July to recharge her batteries, which is, something we all need to do from time to time. And I'm here today with Dr. Tammy Nemeth in Great Britain. How are you this morning?
Hello, I'm doing fine. It's still hot here, amazingly. So, it's so funny. The Brits complain about weather like farmers. And, most British people love to go away to hot places, where they bake like lobsters. But when it's here at home, suddenly it's a bad thing. So I don't know.
It's a major problem when it's hot at your house, right? When it's hot elsewhere, that's fine. But when it's at your house, it's a problem.
So true.
Stu Turley is with us today from Abilene, Texas. How's everything?
Absolutely wonderful. On the 4th of July, we had a great 4th of July. We were getting ready to go out on the boat, and a gigantic storm came through. And so we watched it was wild. So then we traveled from Oklahoma to Texas, and then we had no power in Texas. So I've been making sure that I've had disaster recovery plans for my houses.
Didn't you have any power? Was it a grid problem or just a local?
We had a major storm come through Abilene, and it took out a transformer. 22,000 people in Texas were out, and I was one of those 22,000.
Yeah, we have that same problem around where I am quite a bit during thunderstorms.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit rural, and transformer gets hit by lightning. There's not a hell of a lot you can do except wait for Encore to come out and fix it. I spent the 4th in Las Vegas with my wife. We had a good time. We were right on the Strip and got to see the classic Las Vegas fireworks show, which it went for 7.5 minutes total. I think the finale in Washington, D.C.'s fireworks show lasted about 20 minutes, and the whole show went on for an hour. But in Las Vegas, they don't want you outside the casinos for very long. And so every second casino down the Strip set off fireworks from their rooftops. And we were right there, had a view of most of it. But it was exactly the same fireworks show at every casino, set off simultaneously, controlled obviously by one central computer. It went on for 7 minutes, and then there was a 30-second grand finale. The streets were crowded, packed everywhere. The thing ended, and within 10 minutes, everybody was back in the casinos gambling. That's your classic Las Vegas July 4th fireworks show. But I got to go out to the Hoover Dam and see the big football field size American flag draped over the Hoover Dam, and that was fun. And
wow.
And we had a good time. It was wonderful. I would have rather been home, though, I think, in retrospect, because our house is kind of up on top of a hill, and we have this panoramic view from our backyard of all the fireworks in the area. And in our area, we purchased the most fireworks per capita in the state of Texas right here in our little community every year, and set them off. And it was probably a lot more spectacular from my backyard. Anyway, be that as it may, we had a very eventful week leading up to our show today. Lots of things going on. I'm going to turn it over to Tammy first to talk about several things, including a pair of pipeline proposals in Canada and the status of those things, which seems kind of up in the air. Tammy?
Well, thanks, David. I'm glad you had a fantastic fireworks, even if it was Las Vegas. Yeah. It's interesting what happened in Canada, because there's been all this talk about this memorandum of understanding between Alberta and Ottawa that was announced last year. And by July 1st, they were supposed to have this proposal for a pipeline. And Alberta would prefer if a pipeline went up to the northeast through, I think, Prince Rupert, where the Northern Gateway pipeline was supposed to go. But then they decided that would be too fraught with all the Indigenous groups and environmental groups, and then the Canadian government would have to either repeal the tanker ban on that part of the Canadian West Coast or provide an exemption, which they didn't really want to do. So the solution they came up with was to add a third pipeline on the route from the original Trans Mountain pipeline that was built in the 1950s. They twinned it. That took forever because of all the litigation and everything. And so now they've decided they're going to build possibly a third one there. So it'll be like 1, 2, 3, with a spur that kind of, instead of going to the existing port, it'll go farther south to a different port, which will require some dredging and everything. And it'll basically be government owned. They brought forward one pipeline operator, Pembina Pipelines, but the other two partners are the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which is currently owned by the federal government, and one of the Crown corporations of Alberta is also going to be a partner. And then there's undisclosed Indigenous partners who will be part of this, apparently. And so this is the idea. It's in the major projects office now, which apparently will try to fast track things over 2 years. We'll see what happens. The Indigenous groups have already said, some of them, that they're going to take it to court anyway. The environmentalists are now suing to stop the dredging of the port and river. Even though this happens, they dredge the rivers every year because there's so much silt buildup and everything. But apparently now, because it's related to oil, it's bad. So they're taking that to court. So who knows what will happen. And then the second announcement is the Northern Shield Energy Corridor. So this was something that's been talked about between Ontario and Alberta for the past year or so, where they wanted to have this energy corridor. So they've signed a memorandum of understanding, another MOU, which doesn't obligate anything, but just saying, we think this would be a really great idea. Basically what they want to do, I think, is do a bypass around the Great Lakes through the Canadian Shield and stop the use of Line 5, which the governor of Michigan has been trying to stop for the past 5 years or however long it's been. And so if they're able to build that segment of the pipeline, then they would be able to close Line 5 and stop all the shenanigans with the United States. And then it would be an all Canadian oil route, which at the moment we don't have. All the Canadian oil pipelines tend to run through the United States because of the geography. It's just easier than trying to blast through the Canadian Shield. Now, that doesn't mean to say it's never been done. The natural gas pipeline from Alberta to Quebec actually is an all Canadian route, and that caused a lot of controversy back in the 1950s. But now they've said, we want to do this energy corridor. It sounds like it's going to be a new pipeline, not just an extension of the existing one. And the Indigenous groups right away are like, you didn't talk with us and we're going to stop it and blah, blah, blah. So who knows what will actually happen when push comes to shove. But it sounds like it could be another government operation rather than a private entity, because the governments have made it so hard with regulations and laws and litigation, and it's expensive, that what private proponent wants to put all that money up front to do a proposal only to have it thrown out at the last minute from endless litigation. So they've created this situation where the only ones who can do it are government. So good news, bad news, I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe something will happen eventually. Yeah.
Maybe.
That sounds a lot like the United States, frankly, when you're trying to do a major pipeline,
Yeah.
Same old crap. And then there was another story you wanted to bring up in the North Sea related to the Jackdaw field, Shell and Equinor. This is another absurd story that sounds like something we ought to be talking about here.
Yeah, so the Jackdaw field, they're ready to go. They've been getting everything ready. They said, we can be producing by October. Just give us the permissions, right? Stop the litigation. Stop this garbage. Just say yes, and you'll have natural gas flowing by October and oil as well, actually. So they came out and made this announcement. It was actually put on BBC, and they had a really long story outlining the pros and cons and all that kind of stuff. And immediately the environmentalists, the Green Party, flipping out. Oh my gosh, climate change. It's hot. This will just make it hotter. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure, whatever. And then the other argument is, well, it'll barely do anything anyway. Oh, it'll only be 5% or 8% of the UK usage. It's like, well, actually, that's significant. And you're getting royalties, and it's domestic, and you won't be reliant but 5 or 8% on somebody else, but it is what it is in the UK. So we'll see what happens. Apparently, we're going to have a coronation of a new leader in the UK. A bunch of the Labour MPs have said, yes, we want this new guy. And he's worse than Starmer. So
That's what
I'm
I was
not sure.
hearing, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with that. He'll probably say no.
Did you see the frosty interaction between Trump and Keir Starmer at the, what was it last week, a NATO meeting?
At the NATO thing? No, I didn't see it.
Holy cow. Trump wouldn't even shake his hand. It was just gave him a dirty look and turned his back on him.
Wow. Why do you think that was?
I got to be honest. I think that's exactly what Keir Starmer deserves, but that's just my opinion. It wasn't good diplomacy, though.
Okay.
Well,
yeah, but why?
You want me to answer that, Tammy?
Sure.
I'll tell you. When you have Diego Garcia and we ask to use a military base, and then he says, no, we're selling it. That's how you get Trump to turn his back on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's been around for a long time. So why would he take this position now?
He also was saying, don't use our military bases to attack Iran. And you take a look at the total Iran situation and who's involved actually in the back doors of Iran, that's where it's all at.
Interesting.
Well, Tammy, I guess my question about the new guys, should we be happy it's him, though, and not Ed Miliband taking his place?
He's worse. He's a full-on, he's
really?
A full-on communist, honestly.
Wow.
Worse than Ed Miliband.
Yeah.
Well,
wow.
They're cut from the same cloth, honestly. So it's like frying pan fire. I don't know. So
flame.
Well, it's not unique to England, I mean, we have the same thing happening in the United States. We've got these socialists, really communists, who have been nominated for Congress by the Democratic Party in their primaries, and now in New York, 3 in New York, 2 in Colorado, and really a bunch of them out in California and other places. Now they want to, when they get elected, and they're all going to win the general elections because they're in these 80% Democrat districts. So when they get to Congress, their first goal is going to be revive and strengthen the Green New Deal, which AOC and Ed Markey proposed in 2019, February, I think 2019, which $90 trillion price tag to end air travel and build this grand network of high-speed rail all over the country, which you couldn't get permitted in a century, much less built. So that's their grand idea related to energy and the environment. And so we've got it all going on here in the United States too. And, who knows? I mean, they may well win the 2028 election and we're going to be in the same boat. So it's a very precarious state of play right now in the political world. And of course, now we have the reopening of hostilities between the United States and Iran happened last week in the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf. Stu, what do you think about all that?
It's a cluster. And when you take a look at It's really interesting to see the dynamics of what's going on between the UAE and Saudi Arabia. There's a co-opetition going on there, and then you take a look at the UAE hit 4 million barrels per day export, which is really good. They're getting rolling there, but you also see the rest of the they're starting to line up to start taking shots at Iran. And so this is now a real, we're not just in Groundhog Day, we're in Holy Cow Batman Day, because Groundhog Day is, oh, the strait's open, the strait's closed, strait's open, strait's closed. Straight, who cares? Within 12 months to 18 months, the amount, I guess Tammy's system locked up. David, what we're going to see is within 12 to 18 months, the amount of volume that Iran produces, they're going to lose their oil revenue permanently, is what's going to happen. You're going to have the Strait of Hormuz go absolutely insignificant to the world oil markets. The only one going to be hurt is Qatar, because they can't get their LNG out. Who is that going to hurt the most? Europe. So
Yeah.
you have 80% of what they need was selling to them. They are at 47%, I believe, on their refilling of their summer fill right now. So if you take a look at the amount of volume that they need, Qatar has just announced that it's going to be September, possibly October, before they get restarted again. This could be a lot, going a lot further on. So, and there are some people making some comments in here that are not good. I do like the one from can't wait to see what winter is in the UK will look like. They seem to be gearing up for some solid nuclear additions. That is a great point, Mordecai. Let me go ahead and show his. That is a good comment for our podcast listeners. Can't wait to see what the winter in the UK looks like. They seem to be gearing up for some solid nuclear additions too. Excellent point. You look
to talk about that too before her computer crashed. If she gets it she's having to reboot if she gets back on. But go ahead, Stu.
Nuclear, France, I find very interesting. They took the Green New Deal. Speaking of the Green New Deal, same people in France pulled all their maintenance money, David, out of France. They have 54 nuclear reactors. They could barely run 25%. This is several years ago. They could barely run 25% of their power through their nuclear reactors because of bad maintenance. And they use that money to put in wind and solar. All the money that they put into wind and solar, they could have repaired all of their nuclear reactors and then added a few.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's what's so infuriating about all this. And in where was it? In Virginia, the state, the AI developers now in Virginia, which is the second most active state in building new data centers behind Texas. So they're now covering up all this farmland. They're tearing down forests to put solar panels in, putting it all over farmland, because the state of Virginia has enacted this net zero, or this zero carbon requirement for behind the meter power for data centers by 2045. Well, if you could build nuclear, you could reach that with just a couple of new nuclear plants instead of covering up 500,000 acres of farmland with solar panels, right? But of course, the policymakers don't give a damn about that, because they are clients of the solar and wind industries, and they're, I mean, that's how they're financing their campaigns to a large extent, building new solar and new wind instead of nuclear. And it just doesn't make any damn sense at all. But it's just part of the politics in this quote energy transition that
Todd Royal
we are
was
not
a guest.
going through.
Todd Royal is a nuclear expert, works in the nuclear field, and he was on my podcast. And when Chris Wright said we have spent $10.4 trillion on wind and solar to gain 3% energy, that is a critical number. Todd and I on the podcast calculated out. In the United States, we could have added 174 nuclear reactors for that price, and then had another 1,700 nuclear reactors to spread around the world, and we would not be in the situation in the Strait of Hormuz would not be an issue. That's what the Green New Deal has cost us.
Yeah.
Tammy, while you were having to reboot, we had a comment that it seems that in the UK, the government is gearing up to permit some new nuclear additions. Are you aware of that?
So it's not an addition. It's to extend the life of Sizewell B nuclear power plant for another 20 years. I think it was supposed to close down in 2030, 2035, but they're extending it by another 20 years because it provides, I can't remember, do I have it in this document? Oh yeah, it currently supplies 3% of British power. And they're like, well, I think we need to extend the life of it because we don't have enough. And, they keep building all this wind. They've approved 2 or 3 new massive solar facilities. And the one of them that he just approved the other day, the local council had said no, because it was taking up some key farmland. It was surrounding a village. And they said, no, this will be bad. And Ed Miliband overruled them and said, nope, national interest. So, it's on the one hand, when you have these national interest determinations, it depends on how you're defining that and who's in power, because suddenly they'll be putting up these onshore wind, onshore solar all over the place and just riding roughshod over what people really think or want in their backyard. Now, it goes both ways, right? Because we see the kind of frivolous litigation we call frivolous, right? When it's against reliable power, whether it's nuclear or natural gas or coal or whatever. But on the other side, they're like, well, these are frivolous complaints that, yeah, you're going to have all these solar panels surrounding your village, but, that's the price to pay. And I'm just like, well, I don't think I'd want that.
Well, we were talking while you were gone, Stu and I were talking about what's happening in Virginia, same kind of thing. They've implemented this zero carbon by 2045 policy for AI data centers. And so the AI developers are covering up farmland and tearing down forests to put solar in to try to meet that, even though they're really powering their data centers with natural gas and diesel backup. They are, building all this, quote, capacity for solar to meet that idiotic requirement. And in New York, the other thing that's related to this that I wanted to give you a chance to talk about is we had this targeted power outage in New York and New Jersey that you brought my attention to last week because of these stupid decarbonization policies. And it relates to that extension of the nuclear plant in the UK. We did it in the UK. We did it in California. But in New York, they decided to shut down their major nuclear station. What was it called? Indian Point?
Indian Point, I think.
Yeah. Instead of extending its life. And so now you end up with not enough margin, right? Talk about that deal that happened in New York and New Jersey.
Yeah, I wrote this piece on Substack called Sweating in the Dark, and then there was quite a lot of comments on that piece. And one of the things someone brought up was this idea that it wasn't net zero that did it. It wasn't these policy choices. It was just because they were trying to protect their infrastructure. And so it wasn't a command from like the big, I forget what it's called in New York, the New York electrical system operator. But it was a decision made by the utility, by Con Edison. But the thing is, one of the reasons why they made that decision was because there isn't enough spare capacity. They've closed over 4 gigawatts of reliable power over the past 5 years. That's nuclear, natural gas, oil, and coal. And they've only replaced 2 gigawatts of it. And that 2 gigawatt replacement tends to be capacity, right? Where it's wind and solar and batteries. There's a little bit of extra natural gas, but not much. And the excess buffer was reduced from 17%. So they had a 17% margin there, and it's down to 9%. So when you get, there's the sudden demand, they no longer had the buffer there. And if they hadn't done these targeted outages, it would have fried their aging infrastructure because, when you don't have enough supply, or enough of that buffer. So it's like, but why do they have that small buffer? Because they made these policy choices based on net zero that took away and removed the reliable power from the grid. And I had a conversation with Meredith Angwin, which I just posted this morning, and she talks about that and how if you don't have the base load capacity that's reliable, it just throws everything out of kilter. And when you have all of these different ways of bringing electricity back onto the grid that don't necessarily, it's not simple anymore. They've added all this complexity. Then you get the possibility of blackouts and brownouts. So net zero really is the reason why we're in this terrible situation around the world.
Yep. I
Outside
laughed
of
out
China.
loud. There's a prominent guy who puts himself forth as an expert on the Texas grid on X and social media here in Texas. Last week, he was boasting about the fact that ERCOT has something like 90 gigawatts of excess capacity available during the summer, thanks to all the expansion of solar here in the last 5 years in Texas. But of course, the problem with that is solar only gives you power for a few hours a day, and it's not dispatchable. The problem is when you get into these situations where you only have this thin margin of dispatchable capacity that you can actually call upon when things get really tight, like in New York State. Luckily, we do have a pretty decent cushion of dispatchable capacity, but these idiots talk about solar as if it is baseload, and it is not baseload, and it cannot be baseload. And as long as we allow that conversation to go on unchallenged, which is part of what we try to do here, we're going to get in deeper and deeper trouble because these idiots will put us in more and more precarious situations. Stu?
I'd like to add to this. We just are in Tammy in the United States. We are facing what's called the energy subsidy bum rush. And this past weekend, all of these solar developers, and I see this as I travel between my houses, I see all these data centers rolling in that are just solar farms going in across farmland that used to be farm. I used to see cows go all out there. And the bum rush is now over. So you've now had to have started, installing these things in there. And it is awful. We are about to see, I want to ask you, Tammy, in the UK, solar panels in Texas last about, I'm looking at my watch, which is not on my arm, about 15 minutes. And when as soon as we have a hailstorm, man, they're just obliterated. And so they really don't, okay, let's give them the benefit of the doubt of a solar panel in Texas lasts a year. In the United States, we are lucky if we recycle 1% of the solar panels. If you take an average of a life cycle of a solar panel in the United States and you're at 3 years, everybody's saying these things last 30 are smoking crack. This is absolutely horrific. And Tammy, do you have recycling centers in the UK so that you can build your own solar panels from those recycled materials, or are you buying them from China?
They're buying them from China. And, I don't think they talk about, we will put some recycling things at some point in the future. It's always at some point in the future, right? And, to be fair, in the UK, they don't have the same kind of weather conditions as Texas or North America. I mean, there's the number of hailstorms that we've experienced here, I could count on my hand in the past 10 years. I mean, it's not like North America where you get these mega storms roll through and things are obliterated. On the other hand, they're buying all these things from China. They're taking up what little farmland they have here. I mean, the UK you can fit 2 UKs in the province of Saskatchewan, right? So that's probably, you can fit 2 UKs in Texas.
Yeah. You
So they're taking up what little arable land they have and they're covering them with solar panels. It makes no sense. It's like, okay, why don't you, if you're really concerned about it, put them on rooftops or whatever in urban areas, right? And then Ed Miliband's idea is that, well, we'll make it super easy and you can go buy it from Lidl and plug them into your house and it'll be great. And uh, I don't know. There's issues with fires that have been happening because they're not installing them properly, which is a problem. Um, then if they have the batteries, there's been issues with the batteries starting on fire because of whatever, right? So I don't know. They talk about recycling, they talk about circular economy, but it's just talk at this point, and I haven't seen anything really uh, concrete about it.
I love Mordecai's comment. This is absolutely a hoot. Well done. UK tends to get floods from time to time. What will that do to solar infrastructure as they're installing?
Well, this is why they're putting them in like the nice land away from the rivers, right? And then yeah, they have all kinds of crazy ideas about that kind of stuff. So I don't know.
Well, one thing I want to bring up in this context is a thank you to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who last week got a very significant decision out of a district court here in Texas, forcing the people, the wind operators who have been pouring their disinstalled turbine blades into this enormous surface landfill outside Sweetwater, actually 2 of them, that are
horrific.
Yeah, just blots on the view shed, forcing them to properly dispose of those wind blades. Now, that's going to dramatically increase the cost of maintaining the wind farms that those operators have out there in West Texas, and it's probably going to put some of them out of business, which is a wonderful thing for the state of Texas if that happens. So I just wanted to thank Ken Paxton for suing those people and getting that positive decision out of district court. I'm sure it'll be appealed to the Texas Supreme Court, where Ken Paxton will win again. And at that point, you're screwed. Okay. And this is the problem with the West Texas wind industry, is that you've got a bunch of developers out there who don't keep their promises, who try to stick landowners with these problems, who've contracted with a substandard disposal company that thought they could just, keep piling these wind blades into that landfill, which really isn't even a landfill, and for eternity, I guess. And now they're going to have to actually do something real about it. So that's a good thing for the state of Texas.
I'd like to ask Tammy, because in the U.S., I've found the magic number is 3 years on wind farms. And 3 years, they have been falsifying documents from the whistleblowers that I've talked to, where they actually put in new nameplate upgrades under maintenance dollars so they can use maintenance dollars for it. Bad thing. I can't give the numbers or any names because they're not public yet because of a lawsuit. But then you sit back and look at 8 years is the magic number of a wind farm in the United States of not being fiscally problem solving, because you look at the consumer increases on wind farms at 8 years. That's the magic number. Now, what we're going to see is there's an $89 billion land reclamation liability in the United States, from what I've calculated, that is not funded. Now,
Wow.
is that in the UK or the Europe? How is land reclamation handled? Because there are, everybody says you can go to Grok, go check it out, and then say, hey, is there money available? Oh yeah, there's bonds. 1% of 1% of a little tiny fraction, and then they go bankrupt. Yeah, right. I'm gonna call hoo-ha on this bad dog. And you look at California, there's 4 wind farms in California that are just sitting there rotting. And you look at the wind farm in Texas, as I drive back and forth all the time between the houses, I can sit here and look at them, and there are more and more of those wind farms not working. They work, but you can see my dad and I counted 40% one day of turbines not working. Maintenance is an issue.
Maintenance is a huge issue. I don't know what the answer is with the UK. That's a great question. I'll look into it. Um, it's unclear who exactly owns, from my perspective, I haven't researched it, who owns the different wind farms, how long are they, what's their longevity, who's responsible for cleaning up after. I haven't read very many stories about it, so I'm not sure. Maybe it's an issue that just is underreported. I don't know, but thanks for raising that, Stu. I will look into it. One of the interesting developments here, though, when we talk about Ed Miliband's push, because right now a lot of the wind and solar installations and whatnot are in Scotland or they're offshore. And the UK has done an amazing job, especially England, of protecting the countryside. I mean, it's almost impossible to get planning permission to build a house in an area of outstanding natural beauty. And so, I mean, that means the countryside is amazing. It's gorgeous. I love it. But now they're like, you know what? We can just override that now, and we can put wind turbines in these areas of outstanding natural beauty, and we can put solar installations. And there's one that went up actually just a few miles from where I live, and it's terrible. You drive down the valley and you see it looks like water almost from a distance. And I'm thinking, how many birds is this killing? But in any event, the solution to this, and I'm going to have a Substack piece coming out on it this week. The Oxfordshire County Council is the first one to sort of get ahead of the curve on this one, where they're trying to create a policy which they're calling community benefit contributions and community shared ownership for large wind, solar, and battery energy that gets built in Oxfordshire in the countryside. So basically what it is bribery of the locals and then get them to own part of it to stop them from complaining and criticizing it. And then they're like, oh, you can have a share. The money will charge them XYZ for the installation that will go back to your community and it'll just be wonderful. It's like, no, it won't be. And
I'd love to see if land reclamation is part of that ownership because they get to fund them things.
Exactly, right? So I did the consultation. It took me a friggin' 90 minutes of my life to fill out this consultation. And I'm like, there's no way that an average citizen would take the time to do the consultation. So it was really designed for the activists who have teams and the developers or whatever who will say, oh, well, this would be really great for the community. So I did the consultation and there was nowhere in there about reclamation. So I put in, because there's like the free space. I'm like, where's the clause here about reclamation to ensure that the rural landowners and the communities in the end are not held responsible? There needs to be money by the developer put into a pot, if you're going to do this, that will be used for reclamation afterwards. This is something they've done in Alberta. It's something they've done in Saskatchewan. So it has been done. And they do it for oil wells. You can do the same thing for this. So I doubt they'll do anything because the Oxfordshire Council is so crazy. But yeah, that's their plan, is to get communities to buy in so they'll stop complaining.
Yeah, that's been my biggest concern about the wind industry in particular in Texas, now growing about solar as well, is that, and it's not just in Texas, it's in every state in the country. There's no proper set of regulations governing retirement and restoration of these wind farms and solar farms once they live out their useful life. There's no requirement under Texas law or regulation or in any other state, for example, for the turbines to be taken down and their towers. No requirement at all for doing that. There's no requirement in any state for you talk about land reclamation. If you've got a wind farm on farmland, the only requirement for the enormous foundations, gigantic foundations. Remember, some of these things are 700 feet tall. These are like building skyscrapers. The underground foundations are only required to be 3 feet below the surface. So even when you take down the surface structure, there's never going to be a requirement to take out those foundations and dispose of them so that you can return that land to farmland, because farmers can't risk trying to farm over a damn concrete and rebar foundation that is only 3 feet below the surface. You're going to end up ruining your farm equipment eventually doing that. So, I mean, you are condemning this land forever, effectively, by allowing these wind farms to be put on arable farmland. And nobody in the Texas government seems worried about it. Nobody in any state government seems worried about it. And it's not a federal thing unless it's on federal lands. So in Texas, there are almost no federal lands. And if the state government doesn't do it, it's not going to get done. And that's been a pet peeve of mine for years now. And I don't know, Stu, are you aware of any state that's enacted regulations to that effect? I'm not aware of one.
I just wrote an article 2 weeks ago on New York and the bum rush for subsidies. New York is allowing burial of equipment on their land. I read the thing, and I questioned it. Burial of equipment, meaning they could bury the solar panels there, is the way I read it. It was a poorly worded contract. And I was like, I'm not an attorney, but I can read right there and go, man, that's a burial of toxic solar panels waiting to happen.
That's a real problem. Wayne Christian, one of our railroad commissioners, talks about that a lot. But again, it's not the Railroad Commission's job to regulate wind and solar. It's TCEQ, our Council on Environmental Quality, should be doing it.
And Tammy, when you were taking a vacation on the podcast just a few minutes ago, just kidding, when you had to reboot
5-minute vacation.
The 5-minute reboot. Yay, Microsoft.
Nameplate capacity discussion is critical for people to understand. In Texas ERCOT, last year in 2025, David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we had, 84 gigawatts was our max peak during summer.
Yeah.
We have 180 gigawatts of nameplate capacity.
Right.
However, that mix is so skewed of wind and solar is that 90 gigawatts of nameplate capacity is bull hockey that it doesn't always shine. I can barely talk. That's all, folks. And when you sit back, I almost want to do this in Yoda. Trouble you are. But when you sit back and go, that is a nameplate capacity bull hockey game. We have overpaid for electricity in Texas by billions and billions of dollars.
Anywhere that has a lot of wind and solar is overpaid. They have the contracts for difference, then they have all these other things, and they have the subsidies, and it's all based on nameplate, not what actually gets produced and used. So, you know, that Irina had written about the Energy Institute mental gymnastics of trying to explain why wind and solar actually contribute far more to the global energy production than it seems to indicate. because of all the wasted energy and wasted heat from combustion of fossil fuels. And it's like, okay, so what about all of the dumped energy that happens when the wind produces too much when no one can use it? What about the solar? Same thing, when there's no batteries to
What
back it up.
about the oil, gas, diesel, steel, coal, everything used to make them silly things?
I know. And it's just like, come on, give me a break. But they're serving not they're not trying to be objectively neutral and just talking about the data. They're putting the net zero narrative spin on it because of their EU masters, which it's like typical. But Tom Mumford makes a really good point there, and this is, I think, what they're trying in the UK to replicate with this idea that, oh, it's like you're a royalty owner or something like that. And so what the policy that they're proposing would set fixed tariffs, sort of like a royalty, where they would charge a solar installation £1,200 per megawatt per year for solar, £5,000 per megawatt per year for wind, and £250 for battery storage or something like that. It would get paid annually for 20 to 40 years. They haven't decided what the length of time for these tariffs, which you could, I suppose, call a royalty to some extent. And then it would be put into what they call local and strategic fund. But the devil is in the details with this, because you think, oh, okay, well, that local village that's being surrounded by solar panels will have an opportunity to get this revenue in order to mitigate the more negative consequences or effects of the installation. No, no, no. It gets put into some larger county fund. There will be a council that will decide how it gets spent. And it will basically be used as a slush fund for whatever priorities the council decides. Not what you'll have, the local community that's being impacted will have a little bit of say, but the final decision will be made by some big council, like some other thing. So it's like the money doesn't even go to the people that it'll really hurt. It's going to be going to like a slush fund for activist counselors. And then, like I said, those long-term liabilities are completely ignored in this policy. So we'll see. Shared ownership sounds great until the communities inherit the shared liabilities. And there's no bond or guarantees. So
that's exactly what would happen to it in the United States too.
Exactly.
Except they would first they would farm it through, they would money launder it through an NGO first, and then another NGO, and then it would all get kicked back into their next reelection campaign. That's how we do it in America.
Yeah.
Sorry, but that's the truth. That is just the truth, as we're finding out all over the country. I wanted to bring up one other thing, and that is that the Department of Interior here in the United States made an enormous move on Friday that is getting almost no media attention, which, I guess there's just too much else going on. But they basically finalized a rule that rescinds the ability or the expansion of the meaning of the Endangered Species Act related to endangered and diminishing habitat, threatened and diminishing habitat, which
Are you
has
talking
become
about people that actually work and pay taxes?
No,
or wildlife.
Oh, the endangered species. Yeah.
Oh,
Supposedly it's endangered species like the what was the dune sagebrush lizard, which exists in the millions all over West Texas, is somehow an endangered species. Anyway, the Endangered Species Act, as enacted, is a noble law, a good law that has helped to recover quite a few endangered major species that everyone knows, like the bald eagle and the grizzly bear and the gray wolf. And there's a lot of examples of its success. There are thousands of examples of its abject failure, and even more examples of how it's been abused with the 1980s era expansion of the meaning of the ESA to include diminishing habitat, which is any action that would materially diminish the habitat for a species, can end up getting a species that exists in the millions listed under the act, which is absurd, a complete abomination under the law, and should never have been allowed. And so the DOI on Friday moved to get rid or severely limit the diminishing habitat application under this law. And that is enabled by, as we've talked about previously, the decision by the Supreme Court 2 years ago to rescind the Chevron deference, which has been the enabler of abominations under the law, like this diminishing habitat principle under the ESA. So I just wanted to mention that. It's a huge deal. It is going to end a lot of real abuse and obstruction of not just energy projects, but highway projects and any other kind of a project that ends up turning dirt anywhere with a bulldozer, which has dramatically increased the cost of living in the United States for every American. And I think it's a very positive thing for the country. So hopefully, I know there will be a lot of litigation over this, but eventually we'll get to a point where the Endangered Species Act is applied as it was intended to be applied by Congress. So just wanted to point out that happened. What else should we talk about today?
Can I just comment on what you just said there? Because I think this is something that's happened with the environmental movement, where you have serious, real issues that then get exploited. And it's like the law, no good intention, or the road to H is paved with good intention. So the intent is there to protect habitat in certain circumstances, and then it just gets exploited and extended to everything to just stop development altogether.
Right.
And we've seen that everywhere in the Western world, where, when they first started going after pollution, real pollution, that it made sense to control what, to have the scrubbers on coal plants, to stop the particulate matter, to lower the particulate matter, to try and stop smog and all of these different things. And it's like those laws made a lot of sense and a lot of good was done, to the point now where there's hardly any particulate matter. If you look at the data that the EPA has about the air quality across the United States, yes, there's pockets of bad stuff, but you can target that. And then it was kind of like, well, we fixed that, but we still want to keep raising money and have our organizations and create, anger and everything else. And so it gets taken to an end that we don't necessarily want.
But I want to add that it is selective memory on protecting the environment, because in New York, the bum rush for subsidies and solar panels on farmland in New York has been horrific in the last few months. And they've been wiping out bird sanctuaries. And it is a problem in New York because it's green energy. Dun, dun, dun. We're good people. Hogwash.
Right. It's like all the offshore wind farms put in the middle of whale migration routes. 2 of the whale species are on the endangered species list. And yet Joe Biden wanted to just plop all those gigantic wind farms right in the middle of their mating and migration routes. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's like the offshore wind in the UK and in Europe and whatnot. There has been impacts on different whale species and dolphins and whatnot, and they make it sound like it had nothing to do with the wind turbines, right? Or it's something else. It's climate change.
Right. Yes,
it's climate change.
Right.
And it's like the insect apocalypse that happened in Europe, which a German engineering firm demonstrated it was from the wind turbines, and they just buried the report and then just continued to say it was farming. It was farming and the use of pesticides and herbicides that killed the insects, even though when the engineers examined the wind turbine blades, there was like an inch thick of bug guts across, the arrays and everything, and it slowed down the efficiency of the turbine because there was that much on there.
Good God. So,
but hey, let's blame farming. Let's blame something else and not look at what's actually causing it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's the same groups, what bothers me is the hypocrisy more than anything else. These environmental
Yeah.
groups who claim to be environmental groups. They're really not. They're just conflict groups. The same ones that have fought to expand the application of all these environmental laws. But if you're putting down solar array or wind farm, well, they don't care about any of it. I mean, literally, suddenly they can't be bothered to even talk about it. Greenpeace never said a peep about any of the wind farms out there in the Atlantic Ocean. Never a word. And then
They care about whales.
Right, exactly. The other aspect of Biden's program was the Gulf of Mexico. He did a lease sale in the Gulf of Mexico. Luckily, only one company bid on a lease, and nothing's been done. But they were going to put all these Gulf of Mexico wind farms in the middle of the world's largest bird migration corridor.
Yeah.
I mean, smack dab in the middle of that corridor would have killed millions and millions of birds every year if you put all those gigantic wind turbines out there. And Greenpeace had nothing to say. PETA had nothing to say. Sierra Club had nothing to say. None of those groups would say a word in protest about that. And that's just, it just shows you what a bunch of pathetic hypocrites they really are. Anyway, sorry.
Well, I feel bad for groups like the Sierra Club, which were created initially to actually protect wildlife. Same with the Audubon Society. And then it's like their leadership was taken over by the climate people. And, so
was Greenpeace, Dr. Patrick Moore.
Patrick Moore
thoroughly enjoyed my two interviews with him, and he actually was part of the being a co-founder to stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons. Wow, I did not have that on my bingo card, and it got hijacked, turned it into a political scam.
Yeah. Well, there's a really good book called I think it's by Routledge. It's the Handbook of Environmental Activism or something like this. And in it, one of the interesting things that they discuss is how the environmental movement and the climate movement don't get along. And, we often say that they're one thing, but they actually, it's two separate parts of the movement.
Yeah.
And because the environmentalists want to actually protect animals and whatnot. And then the climate people just kind of run over all that to push their agenda. So
that's right. And unfortunately, the environmentalists aren't in control of any of those groups anymore.
Yeah.
I can't think of a single one that actual environmentalists are actually the governing authority.
All you have to do is look at who Greta Thunberg's handler was.
Who was it? I don't know. I don't
Rothschild.
Even know. Oh, oh, Greta. We haven't heard much from her since she got that bad haircut.
Yeah. Well,
are.
I feel bad for her.
Let's leave bad haircuts out of it. At least she has hair. Mine's flesh color.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I just mention one last thing before we go here? Just lastly, really quick, the G7. Because apparently, according to some articles, energy security took center stage at the G7, and climate sat on the back burner. And I keep thinking, so what happens when Democrats get back in power? Is climate going to come back and energy security be thrown out the window?
They are going to go after net zero and the Green New Energy scam. Green New Deal is going to be front and center because it is such a fabulous wealth transfer that they are going to implement it. And it is absolutely going to be horrific. So if we don't get the United States elections fixed, the Green New scam will be rolled out.
It'll be back. Yeah. Well, it'll be worse. It's like what David said in his Daily Caller piece. The original Green New Deal was the floor. It's the base from which to build more. And I think it'll end up being even worse than the EU version, which they've been adding more and more to since 2019, 2020.
Yeah. I thought Ed Miliband, I've got to hand it to Ed Miliband because I equate Ed Miliband to being able to keep Bernie Sanders at bay. because Bernie Sanders has never changed his tune. I've got to give it to Bernie Sanders. He's always been a communist. But
Yeah.
Ed Miliband has never missed a beat. He is a die-hard, holy cow, Batman. That man is about as dumb as I am.
Oh, I don't know. I think he's pretty ruthless and pretty clever to get what he wants. So
He has
Good
been.
point.
He's gotten
he's wrong.
most of what he wants.
Misguided.
So you got to
He's
give him
getting what he
credit for that.
I'm not in that ruthless category, so I guess that's the difference.
Well, folks, we are over time. It's been fun. We'll meet again next Monday. Come hell or high water. Please join us. Thank everybody for your comments and questions, and we will see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.